First Book of Moses, Bereshayath, Chapter 1, First Creation by Elohim. In the former time periods, as a powerful sign of working, chief son and heir Elohim filled with choice things, behold, as a sign Shemayim, the place of the names, and behold, as a sign Aratz, the chief place of running. But observe how Aratz was unorganized and empty, and Sheshach rose up from the deep waters, went up to its face, but the Ruach Elohim, as a wall of protection, moved violently upon the surface of the waters. Elohim then declared, light he will exist, and light he will exist. And Elohim gazed upon that beautiful light, and Elohim made distinctive the light from the darkness. And to the light Elohim called out the name Ya'un, and to the darkness he called out the name Leah Laha. This was the close and the dawn of the first age.
The Ketub Abarayath, or the Paleo-Hebrew, is a language over 5,000 years old. It chronicles a story branching forth from ancient time. His story, Yahweh. Walk into his story. Read the Paleo-Hebrew scriptures.
Hey everybody, it's that time again. It's Friday night. Looks like I didn't adjust my camera that well. Let's see if I can get that maybe a little bit better. Let's see. No. Maybe that'll work. Anyways, it's Friday night. It is Shabbat is upon us again. It's prep day for me. And of course, you know, for those of you on whatever day you keep the Sabbath on, maybe you're a lunar Sabbath person. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. And let's go into the Discord group and see what is going on.
This is the book of Romans. Romans is absolutely amazing. It is so deep. If you really, really study, especially the part where he's talking about the wretched man that he was, I want to do this, but I end up doing that. And, even though I want to do this, I want to do good, I can't do, I always end up doing. That is so deep. That nails me right to the ground. And most of us, if we really, really think about it, there's a battle. If there's not a battle in you, then there's something wrong. And I like to tell people, you got Satan on one side on your shoulder with the big band just screaming and having a party, and you got that still, quiet voice on the other side. Who are you going to listen to? Who are you going to listen to? It's just like the old Indian proverb, the one you feed. The one you feed is going to grow stronger, So I'm not saying that we should not read these books, because there is a lot of very profound stuff in there. It's just amazing. But especially for the young new believer or anything, I tell anybody that's talking about, tell them, man, read, get yourself a red letter Bible and study the words of the Messiah only. You study that and you live by that, and you cannot go wrong. Once you get stronger and you get off the milk and you want to start eating some steak and potatoes, read the rest of it. Read the rest of it. There's still parts of the Old Testament I can't even begin to fathom. I really can't. Ezekiel, Isaiah, man, those two books just literally blow my mind. I can't, for some reason, I cannot comprehend them. They don't work for me. There are certain parts of them I understand, but other parts of them that I'm just totally lost, and I don't think I'll ever get it.
John, one of the pictures you used there, which I liked a lot, I'll be using it if I understood it correctly, was talking about the two angels on the shoulder, which took me back to like Looney Tunes or Tom and Jerry cartoons. And And that is absolutely 100% true. What people do when they read Paul's letters, Romans or any of them, is they hear the two voices in there, and they just naturally gravitate towards the little, guy in the red leotards, telling them to be naughty. It's amazing how that works.
Yeah, when you're also in the Christian church, they like to use Paul to show you that you're just under grace and just believe, and you don't have to follow the law. Look, see what Paul says? That's why what Peter says, which Mel brought up, is that those who are untaught and unlearned, they twist the word because they're trying to tell you, no, you don't have to do nothing. Just believe. You're under grace. You don't have to do any of the works. Look at what Paul says. So they do. They use the letters of Paul, in which, like Melissa said, we don't have the letters written to him. We just have his responses. And then they use that to say, no, this is what he says. We don't follow the law.
Now, I want to quickly go back to the book of Acts. And of course, I'm recording right now. And I kind of popped in and heard that when I was in here before, and about the road to Damascus moment. That is, of course, one of the major pieces of evidence that is used to lead people down the anti-Paul route. I will point out a couple things just from my perspective, because I've been through this before, and I've seen it from both angles. And number one, actually, if we stop and think about, we need to remember that Paul is not the one giving the testimony. Actually, Luke is. Right? Let's just distinguish the fact that Luke is the writer, and Luke is, as far as I'm concerned, and I know very few anti-Paul people who would disagree with me on this. As far as I'm concerned, Luke is very pro-Paul. Like, he really thinks he's legitimate. Okay, so he's actually trying to put him in a favorable light. And so, as a writer, it is interesting that Luke, not Paul, gives 3 separate accounts that are attributed to either an incident that happened to Paul or Paul speaking. I just think that should be pointed out. One of the interesting things about the book of Acts is that, we have to look at it from a something I've tried to do, at least, is look at it from a literary approach of what are the underlying, what is the story arch and the underlying themes. Clearly, it is a biography of Paul. Luke is trying to, I don't think he's trying to be unfair to the other apostles. I think that he didn't know the other apostles. He knew Paul. And so he was telling the stories that kind of had already circulated around the church. And then he's like, okay, I travel with Paul, so I'm just going to tell you what I know about him. Something that would be similar to that is when I was writing my Flat Earth bio. And, I was in talks with 2 or 3 flat earthers that I knew very closely. I was on the phone with them. And then all the other stories I had to get through, third-hand knowledge. But one of the themes of Acts, interestingly enough, is true testimony versus false testimony. So that is really interesting that when, Luke is constantly pointing out that there's this true testimony and false testimony, that, he may have botched the story of the Damascus account. So secondly, the other point I would like to bring up is that if we're going to use the rule that there has to be 2 testimonies or 2 witnesses to an event, I would challenge you guys to think about what other books we need to toss out. Like, okay, if we're going to toss out the book of Acts, at least Paul's based on Paul's testimony, or maybe we keep the book of Acts, but just toss out his testimony. What about John on the island of Patmos? Do we have a second witness to that? We don't. So we're tossing that out, because this isn't him testifying to the Torah. It's him testifying to say, I literally had visions of heaven. I literally saw Messiah come to me and speak to me and tell me about these events that would happen. We have no second witness to that. So according to that rule, we need to be fair. We need to toss that out. Elijah going to Mount Sinai, we have no second witness to that. Nobody else collaborates that. We do have, obviously with Moses, we can assume that the other Israelites were there to know he went up on the mountain for 40 days, but there is no testimonies to what happened on that mountain except for Moses. There is nobody else there that can collaborate what he saw, the blueprint that he designed the tabernacle. So we have a lot of problems with that in scripture. And I think that we should be consistent. And this is one of the things I did find with the anti-Paul crowd, is that there was no consistency. And I had to stop myself a lot of times. Give you guys another example. It comes out that, people try to make a point that Paul was a Freemason and that he was working with the Herodians, and he may have actually been related to them. Okay, that's interesting. And then, I decided to do a whole study on the Church of Rome and how, some of the people in that church may be related to Paul. In fact, it is a possibility that Paul is actually related to the man who carried the cross for Messiah. But as I started looking at it more closely and seeing how close-knit this family is, I started freaking out and realizing that Messiah was actually personally financed for his entire ministry, for him and his 12 disciples and the hundreds of others with him, through the Herods. And it was actually the Herod's groundkeeper, his wife, that was funneling the accounts through her husband. Apparently, according to the Torah, he would have had to give his permission through the payment of the Herod. So literally Herod was financing Messiah's ministry from the top up. And when I read that, I was like, oh, wow. Like I saw myself as being hypocritical in judging Paul for things I wasn't willing to judge others for things. So I just want to throw that out for just fairness. When we look at this, like we should hold the same standards to everyone. And my thing is like, let's look at Paul's message. Does his message, and it is true, 100% true. Well, probably 100% true. I wasn't there. I don't know, but probably 100% true that Paul wrote all of his letters, at least the bulk of them, before any of the Gospels were written. And that is testified to in Galatians, that, he was off writing letters, and then he had to go to Jerusalem, and he was really concerned. He went and met with James and Peter and was really concerned that he had been giving a false gospel. And according to him, in that they agreed with him. But, that's the other collaborating witnesses with Luke and Acts. But anyways, just throw those out there for you guys' consideration. Just things I've thought about through the years.
Yeah. Makes sense. I just think you have to take everything with wisdom. You have to read everything with wisdom and discernment. And you can't just, what do they say, throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have to a lot of good things up there.
Yeah, no, yeah. The thing is like, yeah, it is really interesting, the three different accounts of the road to Damascus, all in the same book, not in different books, which for me is a lot less incriminating. It would be different if it was like, three different letters, and every time Paul changes around, it's like, okay, you can't make up your mind. This is written, this is done by a letter Luke, who is his biographer. Just so you guys know, when I wrote my biography in the Flat Earth, I would have people writing to me afterwards who I interviewed, and they said, what you wrote, I never said that. And I was really convinced that they were, and they were like, no, I never said that. So those are things, you deal with in interviews when you're talking to people. I was going to say something else about the, and the thing is too, at the end of the day, people will argue and argue and argue against this. They don't like to hear this, but I believe that the Bible is true, and yet not even the four Gospels agree. They have facts that change based on testimony of different people who are giving different details. They will, to the point that apparently things didn't even happen on the same day. I could give some incidents, but the classic ones are based around the resurrection. And so this is where, again, as you said, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater, and recognize, the human equation of this, as you got dudes that are, trying to write about these events 30 years after the fact. It would be like if I tasked each of you with writing about 9/11, like almost 25 years later now. Be like, okay, let's get some stuff written about 9/11. I want you to, there's no internet, there's no books. You have to use just your memories and reflect back on that. And, it'll be interesting to see how people deliver maybe some differing accounts, and it's truthful. It's like your best honesty and truthfulness. But it's, it may not line. They may not, all the accounts may not line up with each other.
And even when one themselves is telling a story to multiple different people, even the same story that one person tells can differ. So, saying that his stories of the road to Damascus, they differ, which very slightly, but he's given an account of a story. I mean, I've told stories many times where I've told it to person A and left something out, and then told person B and put what I left out in. So person A could be like, well, that didn't happen. You didn't tell me that. Oh, well, I forgot to tell you the part of it. So, like, every time you tell a story, you might add or take away or leave out something. Not because you want to or on purpose, but maybe you just didn't think of it at that time.
Yeah.
But so I'm in Galatians right now, right? And so this is something that might be really, really difficult for someone who's new in believing in Messiah to read. So Paul is saying in Galatians 4, he says, now I say that an heir, as long as he's a child, does not differ at all from a slave, though he is a master of all, but is under guardians and stewards until the time appointed by the Father. Even so we, when we were children, were in bondage under the elements of the world. Now people would say that's the Torah, right? But when the fullness of the time had come, God had sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. Now someone may say, well, I was never under the law, so how could I be redeemed if he only came to redeem those who were under the law, right? Then he goes on and says, and because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Therefore you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir of God through Christ. But then indeed, when you did not know God, you served those which by nature are not God. But now after you have known God, or rather yet are known by God, how is it that you turn again to the weak and beggarly elements to which you desire again to be into bondage? Now people will say that's the law. Then he says, you observe days and months and seasons and years. I am afraid for you, lest I have labored for you in vain. So that's something that could be very confusing for someone who is first coming to the Lord, to know Yeshua. And if they read something like that, then they think that all those things under bondage, quote unquote, are to be done away with, because now we're no longer under the law, but we're under grace.
Right. So something you were saying that I fully agree with that advice, is that when people, I shouldn't say everybody, most people, it's good advice that when you realize that the Torah is eternal, you have these commands that we are to keep, to be obedient to our parents makes sense. I mean, when has it ever worked out for any of us as children to be disobedient to our parents? Nevertheless, I get all these Christians saying that they can't be obedient to their parents, no matter how hard they try. I'm like, okay, well, this is okay. Come up with your doctrines and where it's just okay for you to run into the street and do all the naughty things that, they say not to do. Cause you can't help yourself. But it is good advice that people focus on learning the Torah in the Psalms and the Tanakh and that kind of stuff, and then go to Paul. And here's the reason why. When I gave my, it's about, well, actually you have to deprogram yourself. It's about learning biblical language. And so, when you go when I gave the Jesus Taught Torah talk 2 or 3 months ago, I went into great effort before I even got to Messiah to show all the verbiage of, how does the Bible define life, death, freedom, sin, blessing, curse, all these things, the way, the truth. What is the truth? Okay. Well, this is what it says the truth is, right? Okay. Well, I can give you several examples of what the truth is. It's his commands, his Torah, right? Can't back down on that now. And so then you carry over that to Paul and you're like, oh, okay. It actually starts to make more sense. But what happens is that when you're, the way the Galatians is a brilliant example of a social experiment, that if you actually believe that there was a lot of people sitting around in the first century who were just not keeping the Torah, and that he was writing this for them to continue not keeping the Torah. Apparently that's the gospel. The good news is that you were always a sinner and you will continue to be a sinner, and it's okay to be a sinner now. I mean, that's literally the gospel, the way people define it out there on YouTube land and the internet. Then you're going to read Galatians, and as you said, Jenna, you're going to define it like, yeah, he's saying terrible things about the Torah. And he was, I mean, really, that's like the imposter agent Paul there, right? I mean, that's the whole anti-Paul thing. That he really infiltrated a religion, and he brought in all these Christians to do away with it, which would be terrible if true. I mean, we might as well just throw out the Old Testament, because clearly Christianity is a different religion altogether, brought in by an imposter Paul. But if we understand that that the first century, the believers did keep the Torah, and all evidence points to this, then we read Galatians and that what he's saying with a very, very different light. And I really want to finish my Galatians commentary. We'll see if I get there. When I was writing it, I only got through the first 2 or 3 chapters, and I was, line by line commentary. And I was convinced that Galatians is one of the greatest, most important documents in the history of the world, right up there with like the Declaration of Independence. I mean, it's one of those great documents that, it's the same thing today with both political parties. They all try to argue that the Constitution is, in their defense, whatever, it's on their side. And it's the same thing with Galatians, where both sides claim that, it speaks to them. It's really interesting. Yeah, as John Q says, he says, wait, you mean wait, you mean we are supposed to read the first half of the book first? Whoever read the first half of the book first? And it's true, because it is 100% true. I mean, like try that with Dickens. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, and then just that's like reading like in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and then just skip to the last chapter and then try to tell me what the book was about. You'll do that with Huck Finn, do that with any of this stuff. It's like, no, you can't do that. Actually, that doesn't actually work. It has never worked in the history of literature, and it's ridiculous to think that we would have a complete vision in the Bible, and we do. That you can read the end of it and then get the whole beginning, and that you're going to be good enough to all these people. How like we're going around now, and I mean, if people are going to be rude to me, I will straight up ask them. I'm like, I'm like, are you vaxxed? Like, I just want to know, if I'm going to engage in conversation with you, are you vaxxed? Because and I know that's incredibly rude. We pass memes like this, but it's the truth. It's the same thing with Christians. Any Christian who's going to engage me with why the Torah is bad and it's been done away with and you can't keep it, I'm just going to ask them, like, I want to gauge, what is your understanding of the Torah? Like, have you read it? Have you studied it? Because if you have not, then there's no point in having this discussion. Like, you need to go back and read it for yourself, and then let's have this conversation. Let's like pick it apart piece by piece and, talk about this. So.
Right. Yeah, that's like in Romans 6, right? People like to use 6:14. It says, for sin shall not have dominion over you, for you are not under law, but under grace. And they'll be like, see, we're not under the law, we're under grace. But then you go to Ephesians 6, and he says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. So if you rip these things out of context, you're going to think that he's saying one thing when he's saying another. I think the problem is that we think that not being in bondage to the law anymore means that we're not under it. But meanwhile, now we walk in the liberty of Yeshua to where we're now able to actually follow it because he lives in us. So like if you look at verse 12 in chapter 6 of Romans, it says, therefore, do not let sin reign in your mortal body, that you should obey it in its lusts, and do not present your members as instruments of unrighteousness to sin, but present yourselves to God as being alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness to God. For sin shall not have dominion over you, for you are not under the law, but you are under grace. He's talking that sin does not have dominion over you because of the grace of God, not that you don't have to follow the law. But Paul says that I was alive once without the law, but when the law came, sin revived and I died. Why? Because he didn't know not to do something until it was told him not to do it, and then all manner of wanting to do it now rose up inside of him, because that's what happens, right? You tell someone not to do something, and now you're like, well, why not? Now I want to do it. That's when you were in bondage to that. But now we have the freedom because of Christ and his sacrifice and his grace, which there's always been grace. I mean, if you go back to Noah, it says, for God found grace with Noah. You can't say that there wasn't grace in the Old Testament, right? But now that we have the Spirit inside of us, and now that the commandments aren't, on stony tablets anymore, and our hearts aren't stony tablets anymore, he writes them now on a heart of flesh, where they're now inside of us. So we're not under it. It's inside of us. It should be leading us. We should be by the Spirit, which Paul says the law is spirit. Paul says it.
So this is
if the law. What? Go ahead.
Well, this is where the grace is one of those words that like the church uses that means like to try to get a consistent definition from them that actually works is, I have found it to be nearly impossible. And I'm actually very confused by what most Christians think grace is. So, I mean, let's say that like a rapist breaks into my house, to someone's, I won't say my house, because I would say that person was a sinner and had no grace, but breaks into someone's house and abuses the women of the household and steals things and violently hurts the father. And he, somehow the law is on his side, and I don't know, he gets away with it, whatever. And then the family's crying out, that what a sinner this person is. I'm like, no, he's got grace. No, he confesses he's got grace. They're like, no, that's not. It's like, no, he has grace. Christ has given grace, and of course they're going to disagree with that, right? And so, but then when it comes to their transgressions, they're like, no, you don't understand the gospel. I've got grace, and it's like, no, what? And then they will gladly go a quote from James, where he says, "You transgress one, you transgress them all." And it's like, okay, so then what separates you from you and that rapist? They can't answer that question. They can't answer it. And so clearly this word grace that gets thrown around is almost perverse the way it gets thrown around. This is why, we have to go back and study what grace is in the Torah, in the Bible, and understand it. There is grace itself, like when we are living under grace, when we are given grace, the grace is that we can actually be graceful. Like it's not saying that you will be I would like to see a definition, I guess I would like to see a definition where it say that you could be a perverse sicko, and you could and you're graceful. Like, I just don't even see that in Paul's writings. And it's something that people really and I think the thing is that anyone who doesn't have the Spirit working on their heart, and they, they'll make this big deal about how they don't have to be circumcised anymore. And it's like, actually, no, you do. You do need to be circumcised. You need to have a circumcised heart. As it says in Romans 2, you have to be an inward Jew. You have to be inwardly circumcised. And they'll be like, well, I'm circumcised. Okay, great. So you're keeping the Torah. No, that's impossible. Like, then you're not circumcised. Like, you have to be circumcised. And, it's a runaround for a lot of people. And I think that, most of the people that are having problems, that are trying to really push for this, the Torah was done away with, is because they themselves are obviously not willing or able to keep it. I think that they're true when they say that nobody can keep. They project it onto us, which isn't true. You can keep it, but maybe some people can't. And so they're going to try to lead the charge and try to get everybody else. That's what it says in Wisdom of Solomon, that they want everybody else to keep the Torah, and disobey the Torah, and they're going to hate you for keeping it, because in your keeping of it, you actually convict them of their transgressions. So anyone else have any thoughts?
All right, I just want to read something real quick in Romans 8, and I have definitely read over this. It says, there is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. For the law, the Spirit of life, in Christ Jesus, has made me free from the law of sin and death. Ready? For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God did by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh on account of sin. He condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteous requirement of the law might be fulfilled in us, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. So he's saying right there that the righteous requirement of the law would be fulfilled in us. So you tell me you don't have to follow the law.
Jenna, you are amazing. You're and the only reason that, like, I don't know how easy this comes for you. There's others in this group, and I'll just throw him under the bus. It's the righteous bus, John Q. I'm throwing you under the righteous bus. But other, like, John Q's came in and just really amazed me, his ability to pick up on this stuff. And you have to have like a spirit that desires to learn, and that's a rarity. So that's amazing, Jen. I appreciate that you're able to read it and see that yourself.
Thanks, yeah.
It's
Thanks for saying that.
It's a rarity, and it's one of those where I kind of do agree with John in Paul's writings that there are two devils on the shoulder, and because he makes it out like he's starting this he starts these different arguments about how we're not to keep the Torah, and that's like that's the devil on the shoulder, and people go with that, and then you listen to his arguments like in Romans and Galatians and stuff as he builds on them, and it always ends with the Torah bites. But you're like, no, but 3 verses ago he said no. How does he end his argument? And anyways, I'm not coming down on you guys who are anti-Paul. I hope you guys know that everybody has a right to. I need to start every conversation this way. Everybody has a right to say, I don't think, at least with my understanding of the Torah, that he doesn't line up with it. But I will say that he's one of those guys, as I forced myself to wrestle with him and wrestle. You guys know how many times I just wanted to rip him out of my Bible? You know how many times I would sit there so angry, and I would be like, okay, I'm giving you another chance, Paul. And I would start reading Romans. And by the time I get to Romans 2, I'm just like, what are you saying, Paul? And I would just slam my Bible shut, going like, I can't read this guy, and I had to wrestle with him and wrestle with him and wrestle with him and the end of the story is that my understanding of what Paul was saying, and actually some of my understanding of the Torah, was incorrect. Actually, when the whole argument that I thought I was showing in my writings in Romans and Galatians, this whole thing that he says a different message than Messiah, I completely disagree with. I actually do not think that they speak 2 different gospels. That's a big selling point. That if somebody comes to a different conclusion, that's fine. You guys are right to that. We're all adults here. We can come to our different conclusions. But I actually think he does agree with Messiah.
Okay, in the Torah,
I just got kicked off the internet. Okay, well, let me try this again. Why am I kicked off the internet? I'm still recording this video, but as you heard, let's see. No, I'm in here. That's weird. Okay, I'm going to leave Discord and I'm going to go back in.
Against him. So, if someone has not brought up an accusation, you had to lay hands on the person. The accuser had to lay hands on the person and then bring up charges. So, a disobedient offspring, say for instance, you've got in this case, if they're drunken, which means that this is not a little 6-year-old. This is an adult who's drinking and doing unrighteous acts. So the parents themselves have to bring the accusation, and we can't just bring up an accusation against someone else's child. That's just not right. And parents today, they even if it were possible, if we were living, if the United States of America, the whole world were keeping Torah, how many parents would do that? And from my understanding in some of the extra biblical texts, they were given a chance to repent. If they were brought up on charges, if the disobedient child was brought up on charges, they were given a chance to repent, of their behavior, to do right. So there was always that element of redemption, change your behavior, do what's right, which the Torah gives to us. The Torah gives us, if we have sinned, we have a way to make that shalom with the Almighty. We have the ability to correct, to restore. That's what the shalom offerings were about. They were about restoring friendship between ourselves and Yah, or by restoring friendship between ourselves and someone we had offended. So, that's what I have discovered in my research.
Oh, Pam, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's what I was talking about. Like, when I first started reading the text, the Old Testament and the scriptures, I was angry at what I thought was injustice. But then the Father started to change my heart, and then I was led to read other extra biblical texts, and I learned more context of the child wasn't a little kid; it was like a grown man. And the details to these stories. So I now can look at the Torah and really put myself in the place in that, in a community, right? A community that has a moral law that they follow. And now I can see, with learning more, gaining more knowledge, comes that understanding that, our Father was good, and they always had an opportunity to repent. And when they were not, willing to repent, that's when the justice, and sometimes, a lot of times, the justice wasn't even served according to Torah with the people themselves. The people aren't the one that did the justice. It was Yah who did the justice. It was Yah that opened the earth and swallowed them up. It was Yah that, that's the one that sent the plague. It wasn't, necessarily the people. It was Yah doing the correction as the Father. But I'm so glad you brought up that story, because that was one of my big first corrections that I understood when I read the context that was missing out of just the regular Old Testament.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what it's not saying is like, oh boy, your little 2-year-old girl just pooped her pants, and then it was her bedtime, and she told you no. So it's like, you have to have the hard talk with the little toddler. We're gonna have to take you back and stone you now because of this command here. I mean, clearly, like, people will try to pull this off and claim this is what the Torah is saying, but clearly that is not the case in any way, shape, or form, or else you wouldn't have passages in like Proverbs and places that a loving parent brings the rod to their child. You have to, you're intended to bring correction to them, not kill them every time they are disobedient. And maybe that's the problem with a lot of people today when they're grown-ups, and maybe they weren't brought the rod by their parents, and they hate the idea of discipline. They hate the idea of having a God who is a father who disciplines them. That's probably, unfortunately, a big fallout with the last 2 or 3 generations.
And too, if you look at the way that Yah dealt with, say, for instance, when they rebelled against him, when he said, enter the land, they sent out the spies came back with a false report, how he reacted. I mean, first of all, he dealt with the spies, and then he brought judgment on the ones who had believed the spies. And so it was the ones who were over the age of 20. So you have to take that into consideration too. The fact that there seems to be People have talked about the age of accountability. Well, there seems to be that age over the age of 20 seems to have some merit in terms of, accountability. But again, like you say, first had to be the charges, then they would investigate thoroughly. Any charges that were brought, they had to investigate them thoroughly. And it couldn't just be, one person against one person. There had to be sufficient evidence. And the person who would have brought the charge would have been the parent. And it is unlikely that they would have. And I have not found documented anywhere that it ever happened. I have never found it documented that any offspring were brought before, the elders in this manner.
And Pamela, what I said before about having to the reason why it's not done today, because we're not under because we're under government right now, we're outside the camp. Is that right? Was that wrong?
Well, you're still looking at the fact that you've got elders in your town. You've got those elected officials are, unfortunately, the elders of most cities. And does that have a bearing? I would think so. Because even though we would prefer that all of our officials, all of our government officials would be people who walk by the Torah and who have a copy of the Torah at hand, that they can reference it, to see what, Yah's take is on something, so that they're referencing the Torah as to how they should proceed in a matter. The unfortunate fact is that we do have a hierarchy in our country, and Yah works in hierarchies. We don't want to acknowledge it, but he does.
Right.
And therefore, you've got elected officials who would never, ever, it would be political suicide. They would never, ever, might send a child to well, not child, but, they might send someone to jail for drunkenness. But, disorderly conduct. But, that's, that's just the absolute fact of this day and age. Maybe when we're all in the land, but as I said, I've never seen it. I know that there are some people who have been absolutely wicked against their parents, who've actually murdered their parents, and the justice system has taken care of some of those.
Right. So since we have a justice system,
Yes.
which clearly, where did they get their quote unquote justice from? Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is any type of morals or anything is the moral code is from Yahweh anyway. So we are under a justice system. It's just that we're not under a government that follows and believes the Torah, so they handle it a little bit differently. But they do have the death penalty. It may not be stoning, but you can get the death penalty if you kill someone.
Here in South Carolina just formed a firing squad just a couple of weeks ago for the first time in American history in quite some time.
Well, Alabama has got the Yellow Mama, which was featured in the movie The Green Mile. But the thing is that it's very rare for them. I mean, most of you know that my brother was murdered. He was murdered in the act of this person stole my brother's vehicle and then murdered him with his own vehicle. And it was it's a heinous act. But the perpetrator was 15. And the prosecutor told us up front, he said it's very unlikely, even though it's considered, capital murder, he said it's very unlikely that any jury would ever give a young person of the age of 15 the death penalty. So this individual has been in prison since 1991. So we do have a justice system that takes that. I think, it's not perfect. I mean, it's not perfect, but it still is. It still, there are steps that protect protect the accused, so that justice is done. And there is a long process. I mean, we went through it. It's a very, very long process. When something like this happens. So, it's not like television. Television makes it seem like it's just, it's done like in a week or two, but
Yeah.
it's not. They act like, they find evidence and they're convicted within like a month or so. That's not the way it is. It is a huge process, especially since he was underage. There was the process of having him declared to be tried as an adult. So that was that process. So that in this case, someone's not railroaded into anything. And whatever you may say about the justice system in America, it is flawed. There are mistakes made, but it's, as you say, it's based. You might not think so, but it is based on both the law of Yah and just natural law. So
I want to quickly point out that another thing in like TV shows, if you watch like police shows or whatever, I used to love Blue Bloods, and in every single episode, the police officer will pull out his gun and shoot somebody, and it happens every week after week, and it's just like, first of all, I think no, it might have gone up recently, I don't know, but the average police officer will not shoot someone once in their career. Like, it's either once or less than once in their career, meaning that there will be police officers who will retire and never have shot somebody. Sean, just so you know, you have a hot mic here. Sean Walking Bear. And the sheer amount of paperwork you would have to fill out every single week. That's just a side note to TV shows. But I do want to point out, because as you guys know, and a lot of people have left this channel, they've been chased off from this channel because of this. I think that this is one of the big contributors. I find that within, a lot of people within the truther movement, there's way more woke mentality. And I've seen more and more coming in where all these people claim to be red pilled and they're actually woke. And they're pushing all this liberal stuff in here. There's that, but there's within the Torah movement, I have noticed this huge emphasis on, they have this unique understanding of scripture, and there's no hierarchy, right? There's just, and they'll be like, Yah doesn't want kings over us, so I don't recognize any kings. And it's like, well, actually, that's too bad. That you may not want a king, but Israel was given kings, and they were an authority, and we are in the diaspora, and we have an authority. You may not like that. Maybe that's an issue on your heart, but you have an authority over you. No, that being said, what we see in the Torah with Moses, what he sets up, he was not a king. He called on everybody to be kings. They rejected that, but he did have a system put in place where he had people bring representatives of their communities forward, and they had that whole system where they voted on who they wanted to represent them, and they would be representatives of their community to Moses. This is like what we have today. and actually in this country. And the more I look at it biblically, the more I realize I was wrong in the past in, telling people, insinuating not even to vote or take part in the process. Fact of the matter is that this country has we have seen radical change. Some people are just, sticking their fingers in their ears and closing their eyes, saying, no, 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 no. They don't want to see it. They don't want to see the change. But we have seen some change towards good, towards justice being served. And, that is all a part of the people coming together and saying we need better representatives. And as Pamela said, it's a flawed system. There is still evil. There is still flaws. It is not a perfect system. But, I don't know. I no longer, and it's going to scare more people away because a lot of people here are, in the truther community as a whole are very bitter towards the government, very hateful towards the government. They want an anarchy is what they really want. That's their idea of being red pilled. And I see that as completely opposite of the heart of Yah, that he, even within small house churches, there's still the lady of the house, the master of the house. There's still the authority there. And that's how he set it up. So I actually see John Q just pointed out that the whole innocent until proven guilty, that's Torah too. I mean, there's so much that we find in our legal system that is biblical. I will say though, unfortunately, that, and I was, for those of you at the retreat, I was speaking with a officer of the law there, a deputy sheriff from Missouri, and he was telling me that he's like, yeah, unfortunately, the law has become flipped in the last generation or two, where it's actually geared more towards protecting the criminals now than the people who are not criminals, and that's really evil. It's sick. We can change this. This can change. One of my friends, he's a retired guy. He spent the last few years in Florida with us down there, and he's a retired prison guard. Spent his whole life in the prison system, and he said he was there before the guards had to have cameras on them, and then he was there after the guards had to have cameras on them. And he said that was the moment it changed, where now the criminals had full rights and the prison guards had less rights, to the point they could no longer do their jobs, and the evil increased in the prisons, and the laws were geared towards the increase of evil. And that is unjust. That is what we need to be like, no, we do not stand for that. That's why he eventually retired early. He got out of there. He said he couldn't do it anymore. It's a shame that we've come to that.
Hey, Noel, I want to ask a question about, justice and when we look at the words of Messiah, how do we balance between? I personally think they complement each other, but when it comes to this argument about, reprimanding or punishing people for breaking the Torah, breaking the law, or whatever, it seems to me like Matthew 7, Messiah is saying, he's saying something very, very important about judging lest you be judged for the same measure that you're judging someone else with. And then at the end of Matthew, of course, we know we're given the Great Commission to go out, but he says nothing about passing judgment. And it seems like it's a different commission. Well, now knowing that we're in a, most likely a different season, how do you see that commission?
How do I see the commission of how I judge others is how I'm going to be judged? I mean, is that what you're asking? Because that's definitely what I believe.
Like how do you walk out the Torah? That's, is it the same? I mean, has the commission in your mind changed at all from when Messiah gave us the commission? And, he's telling us, obviously we're not, he never says this stuff. He's always complimenting the Torah just in a different way, in a more peaceable way, really, but truthful way. So I just wondered if, knowing that we might be in a different season, in the little season, do you see it any different, or you see it the same?
I think. Oh, I see. Here's how I see the teachings of Messiah. I don't believe that he came along and he changed the meaning of the Torah. If we believe that, then Paul has every right to change it as well, or anybody else, John Smith or any other John that comes along. What Messiah was doing as a true prophet is he was coming along and showing them how the Torah should have always been interpreted. And this is why I go back to the fact that it is a transformative document. It is intended for us, not for anybody else. So there are, to give you, this is the difference between a Torah pursuant individual versus a Torah terrorist. A Torah terrorist will come out and they will judge you on pronouncing a name wrong or spelling a name wrong, or they will just go down the list and they like to point out, they like to be the spirit of the accuser and point out all the ways that you are blah blah blah, not keeping it according to their understanding of it. And that's a person we don't want to be. That's a person nobody has ever wanted to be in the history of the world. And I believe that's what Messiah is directing us to. So give you example is, let me think about that. How I, but I do believe very, very much that how I judge people is how I'm going to be judged. So let me just bring it back to the Paul discussion. And I'll tell you guys that this is, the vision I had. Some of you are like, oh, not this again. I've only given this a few times. And I was a part of that whole movement where thousands of people, thousands, maybe tens of thousands, thousands and thousands of people walked away from the faith completely. Like the Bible. They didn't even go back to Christianity. They just walked away from the faith. And this was the anti-Paul crowd. And I know that the anti-Paul people are like, no, that's not me, whatever. I'll never, okay. But I was a part of this and I watched it happen. And there came a moment where I was just so remorseful for what I had, for being a part of that. And I was just pleading for forgiveness. And I remember Yah gave me a vision where I was in front of a throne in heaven. I didn't see who was on the throne. It could have been throne of anybody. It could have been David. It could have been, the apostles. Who really knows? Could have been Paul himself. I don't really know. But there was a guy, somebody on a throne. Could have been Messiah. And I couldn't look up and face him. I was just like spaghetti on the floor. I was so limber. I actually had a couple dudes, it could have been angels, a couple of guards that grabbed me from behind and lifted me up, and they turned me around 180 away from the throne. And I saw that the people were being judged and tossed into the lake of fire, and they held me right over the lake of fire. And I looked out and I saw thousands upon thousands of people being thrown into the lake of fire. And I looked out and I recognized some people that were being thrown in. And I saw a glimpse of what it says in scripture of the moment of shame. Like the Old Testament talks about, like the moment when people are destroyed it's their moment of shame, because everybody is going to see them in their shame for all their life decisions and all their rejections of the commands and so on and so forth. And I felt so much shame in that moment. And what I quickly realized, the message that was being given to me is that how I judge and how, what I say is, it matters. And it matters that, leading other people down a certain path of total rejection. And so from that moment on, I ceased and desisted from ever criticizing Paul again. And that is the moment, of course, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Now, again, some anti-Paul people are just going to chuckle at this. But when the thing is that I quickly learned is that some of the things that I saw in the community, the way they would judge Paul, the judgment they would make on him, I would just like, oh my God, I don't want that same judgment on me. Because a lot of the things that, like, there is no grace given this guy. Like the kind of, like, this guy can't even be wrong about something. Like, if he's wrong about something, he's getting thrown in the lake of fire. And I'm just like, again, oh my God, I am wrong about so many things. I say so many things that are incorrect. I'm going to be thrown in the, if I think that way, I will be judged that way. I will be thrown into the lake of fire. And I don't want that. I want mercy. I want mercy from my Father in heaven. And so this is why Messiah is so clear about, just phrase it in this way. He's like, show other people mercy. Because if you do not show other people mercy, I will not show you mercy. It's the story of the king with the servant that, he was in great debt, right? And the king paid off all his debts. He's like, you're good to go. And then he went to his servant and he, chastised him. And the king's like, you know what? I'm throwing you in prison and until you pay off, I am not showing you any mercy. And this is how he will judge us. How we look at other people and we just focus on, oh, look at their sins. Oh, they're not as Hebrew as I am. They're not as righteous as I am. Oh, they're pronouncing the names. They're on the wrong calendar. All these things. And it's like, okay, fine. You know what? Go around and judge everybody else who's on a different calendar than you and just watch when you're on the wrong calendar. Just watch what happens. Like, put all of your chips on that table, all of your chips, your very soul on that table, and stake everything on you having the 100% correct understanding what the calendar is. And let's see what happens when you don't show other people mercy. All right. So that right there is, yes, we are still. So what Messiah did is he came and showed how the Torah should always be interpreted from the beginning to the end. It wasn't a new interpretation that came to an end. That's my spiel. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Can I have a minute?
Please do.
Yeah. So on that, in the Proverbs, it says, do not be over righteous, why destroy yourself? Do not be over wicked, why die before your time? He who lifts himself up, it's like you justify yourself. Beware of the height that you've fallen from, because when you lift yourself up in pride. So there's two people that will not make it. The two types of people: the ones that are like abhorrent sinners, and the ones that are saying this is the way, and they hold on to that position. And so that's the being over righteous. And so you will be equally condemned by judging other people so severely on your righteousness of not right and wrong, good and bad, but your righteousness of judging others on correct and incorrect. And it is a huge discrepancy in not allowing grace and mercy in your judgment of what is right and wrong virtuously versus what is right and wrong on an intellectual, because knowledge puffs up and love builds up. So there's a huge difference in our judging. And we all are to judge, but how you judge others is how you shall be judged as well. And then that goes to an eternal process as well at the end days too. So I just wanted to put that spin in.
So going back to what Melissa said in Matthew 7, it says, judge not that you be not judged, right? For with what judgment you judge, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And listen to what he says. He says, and why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not consider the plank in your own eye? Yeah. Or how can you say to your brother, let me remove the speck from your eye, and look, there is a plank in your own eye? Hypocrite, first remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will clearly see to remove the speck from your brother's eye. So he's not saying to not judge. He's saying that how you judge is how you're going to be judged. So if you're judging someone with a plank in your eye, like Noel said before, if you're judging someone, based on their righteousness, or lack of righteousness, meanwhile you have that same lack of righteousness, then you're going to not be given as much mercy, just as you're not giving the other person mercy. But if you have perfected and taken that plank out of your eye and perfected that righteousness, then you're able to judge righteously somebody else. And so if you go to Corinthians, I know Paul is just our favorite person today. He says in 1 Corinthians 5, he says, I write to you in my epistle not to keep company with the sexually immoral people. Yet I certainly did not mean with the sexual immoral people of the world, or with covetous or extortioners or idolaters, since then you would need to be taken out of the world. But now I have written to you not to keep company with anyone named a brother who is sexually immoral or covetous or an idolater or a reviler or a drunkard or an extortioner. No, don't even eat with such a person. Ready? For what have I to do with judging those who are outside? Do you not judge those who are inside? But those who are outside, God judges. Therefore, put away from yourself the evil person. So we are not to judge the world, because we're supposed to go out into the world and give them the good news. But we are to righteously judge those who are inside so that we might save their souls. Because if I'm doing something wrong and somebody knows about it, I would hope in righteousness and in love they would come and talk to me about that and be like, hey, Jenna, you're sinning. You're doing something that is against pleasing God. You're transgressing against his law. So interesting. What passage is that? 1 Corinthians 5, 9 to 12. So yes, we are supposed to judge righteously and lovingly within the body of Christ. But those who are without, God will judge them. We're supposed to just give them the good news. And that's it. Then our job even ends there. Paul says, I planted, Apollos watered, but God will give the increase. So it's up to the Lord to open up the heart to if these people are seeking them. So
Amen. And Jenna, go to Proverbs 9:8.
Proverbs 9:8. Hold on. Okay. 9:8. Do not correct a scoffer, right, lest he hate you. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love you. Yes, amen. Amen. So, we should love correction lovingly from a brother or sister, because, only a fool hates correction.
Yeah, that's good.
And also, if we could just jump back to the the stoning and the law and what we're doing right now as far as because we're under a government. I mean, if you go to Romans 13, it says, let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. For the rulers are not a terror to those who do good works, but to those who do evil. Do you want to be unafraid of the authority? Then do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For he is God's ministers to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is God's minister, an avenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. Therefore you must be subject, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. For because of this you also pay tributes, for they are God's ministers, attending continually to this very thing. So the justice system has been ordained and given authority by God. And so that's where our laws and our rules and everything that we obey, that would still be being quote unquote under the Torah's guidelines of justice, because God has set these people up now. And if I'm wrong, someone correct me. Oh, okay.
And if the governing authorities who are subject to the King of Kings, if they contradict or go against what his law is, if they pervert justice, if they don't prosecute the wicked but persecute the righteous, then our mandate is to replace that authority with one that will be subject to the King of Kings. It is our right and it is our duty to throw off such a unjust government.
Yeah.
The problem is the beast system rules the world today. I've had the opportunity to live in multiple different countries that supposedly are a democratic society. There's no such thing. There is not one single country that I know of on the planet that is a democratic society. Most of them are either a dictatorship or they are a republic. A republic is a country in which you appoint people to rule over you and to make laws. The problem is almost all your congressmen and senators, whether it be in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in most of the free world today, most of those representatives are attorneys. Those attorneys actually make the law, and they make the law to protect themselves, to make themselves rich, and to drive the rest of the world down into despair and poverty. That's the simple rule of a republic system. There's no such thing as a democracy. No country that I know of in the world allows its people to vote and make laws and to decide what is going to be done to them. It doesn't exist. If it is, please let me know where that is and I will move there.
Hey,
Matthew, it's very true, John. But the fact of the matter is, and I agree with you. Yes, like I know we were supposedly we're a constitutional republic, right? But as true as what you just said, that doesn't diminish the fact that we still need to be obedient because that's what Yah put in place for us. So even though they're doing the wrong things, we as children of the Most High, we still should do the right things and be subject to the authorities. You know, I mean,
so
go ahead.
So
when the authorities are going against the rule of God, that's where in our Constitution, under the Second Amendment, we are supposed to rise up and overthrow that government and put in a righteous government, which we don't do. We don't do it. That we have allowed them to rule over us and take everything we own. We own nothing. I mean, you own nothing. You have to have a license for everything. You have to pay tax on everything. You own nothing. You work your whole entire life to buy a house. You pay the house off and you still got to pay tax on it for the rest of your life. You own a cat or a dog, for God's sake. I mean, this is ridiculous. You own a cat or a dog, you pay tax on your cat and your dog. I mean, there is no way that that is a righteous government under the rules of our Father. And the problem is that we have nobody to join us together as a community to rise up and overthrow the government and put in a righteous government. And it's never going to happen because the beast rules the world. I'm sorry, brothers and sisters. I'm not being a pessimist. I'm just telling you the facts. The beast system rules the world, and it will until our Messiah comes back and sets it all straight again.
I just want to point out, brother, that Messiah is on the throne, and he still has power to overthrow if he chooses. And the point is, even when the disciples were in just as wicked of a nation as we are today, there were still mighty works, and there's still beautiful things that can still happen. So I'm being an optimist while you are being a pessimist, because Yah and Yahusha is still on the throne. He is still ruling and reigning, regardless of what government is in control over the earth. It still doesn't matter. He's still in control.
I'm not
You
being
can tell me so I can grab these, okay?
There's a difference between being a pessimist and being a realist. Okay, I quit being a pessimist a long time ago, but my eyes are open to the reality of the truth. And the reality of the truth is the beast rules the world. And it is. Period. The whole world is being ruled by a beast system.
Okay, so I'm going to let Matthew jump. I'll let Matthew jump in because I know a lot of people want to talk right now. Matthew, say something, and then I have something I want to throw in, and then I think Stephanie wants to say something as well.
Oh, no, sorry. My headphones just turned on. I'm going to mute.
Okay, Matthew, go ahead.
I'm going to have to leave and come back.
Okay, so as for the Constitution, it's written inside of the Constitution that you can change it when it goes down. So that's the one thing. So thank God it's in there. The other thing is because the deep state has been ruling the world and they've been doing it behind the scenes, there's no way to confront that openly to the public that would be accepted. So by rule of knowledge and how this has to go down, like just logically, it has to be undercover. It has to be under the scenes. If it has to be under the scenes, it is very possible, not necessarily likely, but it's very possible that the rooting out of the corruption has already been taking place, but we are unaware of it. Hence, continuity of government, yada, yada, yada. So with all that being said, that's what I think is more of a realistic view based on the knowledge of how it would have to be taken care of. And there's enough signs if you look in the right directions to say like, it might be. So anyway, as far as the Constitution is going, John could give a little more. John King could give a little more information on that if you wanted to open up with where it's in the Constitution to go ahead and kind of change it.
Well, let me just say from my perspective real quick. And I do, I hope, Matthew, I do hope that you are correct and that, Q comes in and saves the day. I do, hope that's the case. But so let's just let's look at the state of the world right now. So, we're still being lied to about NASA. We still got Masonic lodges in every community across America. Zionism is still in control of the Roman Catholic Church. You go down the list, right? And I think a lot of, I don't know if this is like the phrase, can't discern the forest for the trees would be correct in this, what I'm stating right here. But I think it's very easy for us to get lost in all of this and just say, this is overwhelming. We can never solve this issue. It's going to be like this forever. All we can do is just, pass around memes saying how terrible this life is. But the fact of the matter is that we have seen victories. We have actually seen, and then the glass half empty person will say, well, they're just setting up the next thing. It's like, okay, well, if the next thing is overturning Roe versus Wade, awesome. Let's I'm all for the next thing. Let's do it. Like let's have the American government stop funding the $2 million each day to Planned Parenthood. Let's just cut that. Awesome. I'm all for that next thing. I'm all for, the education to be returned to the state. Another great thing this last week, it looks like daylight savings is finally coming to an end. Thank God. Like, there are a lot. We've seen woke culture they've just, I don't know, went into their own trap like Elmer Fudd or Willie Coyote. I mean, we're just seeing all these things toppling, and these are all good things that are happening. It's the equivalent of giving your enemy enough rope to hang themselves, and we're literally watching them hang themselves. So again, wherever there is injustice, we need to point that out. Wherever there are lies, we need to point that out. But we also can't lose sight of the fact that we need to. So, when it comes to 9/11 truth, when it comes to chemtrailing, when it comes to all these things, let's go down the list. Yes, let's continue alerting people and waking people up and showing them the deception and waking up, the people in mass. But also let's be on the side of, let's not stand in the way of justice, right? Let's be on the side of anyone who is doing justice. We can partner with. We can be like, yes, thank you. We can at least acknowledge that and not stand in the way of it. Hopefully that made sense for everybody. John Q, I wasn't sure if you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I think Matthew had asked me something about how does the Constitution give us the right to throw off the government? It's actually it's not in the Constitution itself, but it's in the context of the Constitution and other documents that are founding documents, which is in the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence is where it says that if any government, usurps, our rights, that we have not only a right but a duty to overthrow such government. And then the Constitution itself, the structure of government itself, is set up to allow us to, every 4 years or every 2 years or every 6 years, peacefully throw off that government. Now they have taken that ability away from us because they have corrupted our election system, which is the only way that we had to throw off that government peacefully. So that's where it gets tricky. But that's where the Second Amendment backs up the First Amendment and all that kind of stuff. But the Second Amendment, when it comes to a tyrannical government, is the very last resort. It should always be the very last resort. because war is just not something anyone really wants to do.
Well, the problem with the Epstein list, the problem with prosecuting Hillary and all these other problems is that if it ever did come out, you would end up shutting down the entire government of the United States. Hillary has all the dirt on everybody. That's why she'll never be prosecuted. You know, Trump always, well, if I was president, you'd be put in jail. I mean, how many times have we heard that? Why? I mean, here we are. You know, he's had 4 years to do it before. Pardon me. He's in office again. It's not going to happen, people. I'm sorry. Just why you'll never see the Epstein list, put out there, the whole thing. It's never going to happen because there would be so many people that would go down with that. You would end up shutting the government of the United States down completely because almost all of them are corrupt. I'm sorry. I'm not being a pessimist. It's a realism. It's the facts. You're never going to see that list complete. You'll see parts of it. You'll never see Hillary in jail or prosecuted because she'd take them all down. It's a psyop. You're looking at the other side of the coin. That's all it is. If you think Trump is the good guy, is going to solve all your problems, everything, sorry, not going to happen. You cannot be a billionaire in this world and be a good person. Elon Musk, I mean, come on, he's doing Neuralink, people, Neuralink. He wants to link your brain up to a computer to where a computer you can actually deal straight with a computer. These are not good people. You're being blinded. I'm sorry. If you can't see that, you're being blinded. I'm not being rude. I'm not being pessimistic. These are just the facts. Open your eyes and see reality.
Okay. Well, okay. So, just on that point. So, you had stated that he can't solve all of our problems. I don't know anyone in this group that thinks that Trump would solve all of our problems. In fact, that is the complete opposite of a conservative idea. Conservatives, if everyone in this group is a conservative, then you're going to come with the ideology that you yourself are the one to solve your problems first. It starts with you, and that you are to solve the problems for your family, and then you work on your community and on. So conservatives tend to want less government. They see the government as evil, and so they want somebody. Typically, they want somebody who is going to remove the power from the government. So but I again, for me, Roe versus Wade being overturned, I can't get anyone who is, it's hard to get anyone to actually confess that was a good thing. Roe versus Wade was overturned, and which means that there are less babies being aborted in this world because now states have a right to vote it out, which is amazing. That is a good thing. I can't say that's a bad thing. That is a good thing that happens. That's something that I never thought I would see happen in my lifetime. I don't think anybody thought they would see that happen in their lifetime. And so from there, you start building it up, and you're like, and if we are to elect our officials, again, the great conspiracy is that elections don't matter. That may be the case. I actually think that there's probably something more like spiritually motivated behind it than actual rigging, even though the 2020 election was clearly stolen. If we're going to elect our leaders, we can see the contrast between the last
Did we just go like dead air, or did you just stop talking?
No, just you. It must be just you, Jenna. No, I can still hear you.
Hello?
Yeah.
I guess so.
It's for you. It's dead air, Jenna. Yeah. Anyways, I want to point out that we should never take the argument if somebody is happy that there's less babies being aborted. I will never stop milking this. Like, I am so happy. I want abortion eliminated. I want it. I am.
Audio?
Jenna. Okay. Okay. I want abortion completely eliminated. I will be singing Glory Hallelujah the day it is. And what I mean completely eliminated is from any kind of federal funding, anything like that. I want it gone. And there will be some individuals out there who will never be happy about that. And I am convinced that there are many individuals out there who would rather have a government. It's kind of like, how do you want your, like, beast government? How do you want your new world order? Because do you want a new world order that's going to be coming in your house and licking under the floorboards, or one that gives you more, rights to live your life, right? I want to live in a world where the government says, Noel, you have a perfect right to execute your belief in the Bible and to live it as you deem fit. Yeah, so that's all I have to say on that. And it's not about the opposite of thinking. Obviously, I'll say this one more time, every true conservative wants less government. That is a true conservative, because we know that the bigger the government is, the more wasted funds, the more corruption, so on and so forth. We know that there will always be corruption, and that there will never be a leader. There will never be leadership that is uncorrupted. I shouldn't say never, but just the history of mankind, that seems to imply that. Yeah. So it's leftist theology that believes that the government is their savior. They want a government that is going to come in and solve all their problems. So we should never push that accusation. So it's kind of one of the things that's pushed on the Anon crowd. And as I say, I'm not an Anon, but I do not know any Anons who believe that we should have a bigger government to solve our problems. Yeah.
Well, let me go back and pound the nail a little bit deeper into the coffin. As far as Elon Musk goes, and I could be off a little bit on my timeline, but if you went back 6 years ago, roughly 6 years ago, almost nobody had ever even heard of Elon Musk. If you look at the richest people in the world 6 years ago, Elon Musk wasn't even in the top 50. Well, how did he go from a nobody that wasn't even in the top 50 to all of a sudden being the richest man in the entire world? Pretty simple. Biden started putting out his mandates for electric cars and stuff. Next thing you know, boom, within a very, very short period of time, the guy becomes the richest man in the world. If you don't think there's something fishy with that going on, well, you got your head in the sand. I'm sorry.
Well, no,
he's not a good.
Yeah, he clearly, I shouldn't say clearly, but he clearly got much. I haven't looked at his accounting book, but Elon Musk clearly became very rich and powerful through the government. No doubt about that. So, but there's also, we can get into economics and everything about the private sector. And obviously the private sector is what we want. The private sector is where we see the best achievement. Another big conservative view, but I know that some of you want to return to some biblical topics, even though I see this as biblical, but politics kind of.
I just want to say one more thing, and then I'm going to shut my mouth.
Please do.
But here's the thing. We all know, and brother, you keep bringing it up, and you keep saying you're not a pessimist. We know we live in a fallen world. The point of gathering here is to build up the body so that we can be stronger. And so I'm here to be edified. I'm here not to just have reminders constantly that we live in a fallen world. And so I'm asking you, build me up. Don't just continue to tell me that I'm in a world and there's no hope. I need to be fed that there's hope in Scripture, and there is. I know it's true, so that I can go out and build up others. And so I'm just asking, let's bring it back to the place that matters and the one who matters, and the one who some of us are getting ready to celebrate what he did for us and the sacrifice that was made for us, the perfect, spotless lamb. And I want to talk about him. And I want to talk about how we are doing what we're doing to edify the body and to get through the hard times. I know that this is important to some people, but I know some of us just, we need to be edified and built up. And so that's all I'm going to say.
Well, Mel, I'm not. This is an open forum, okay? And we're here to discuss everything and anything that has to do with the world and scripture. And I love you want to be edified and everything, but the tone and the way that you're talking every time I say something like that, it's almost as if you're attacking me. And I hope that that's not your premise, but I mean, that's the way I feel, like you're putting me down for stating facts and being realistic. I mean, we're on an open forum here. And that's one thing I love about this group is, yes, we want to edify each other, but yet we want to talk about the world and things that are happening in the world because it pertains to us. I mean, if all we did here was sit and praise each other and give good things to each other, we're putting our heads in the sand and ignoring what's going on in the world. So, like I said, it just gives me a tone like you're attacking me when you say stuff like that to me. And I hope that's not your intention, but that's the way it's coming forward.
Graham, is your intent to have an hot mic right now?
Nope, sorry.
So,
I just Mel, I understand where you're coming from, my sister. I do. And so let me give you something to comfort you and edify you. But I do also understand John as well, because like he said, this is an open forum, and this should be a safe place for where we guys can come and talk about things. And even if we disagree, we sit and we listen. And it's like that new Instagram thing. We listen and we don't judge. But I understand your need to be edified, because the Bible does say, be simple concerning evil things, right? So we want to be simple concerning those things, but we also don't want to be ignorant or unaware of the things that are going on, but we don't want to focus on them. But in Hebrews 11, after whoever the writer of Hebrews is, goes over all the people that how by faith they did things, he finishes, or she finishes, whoever wrote it, in verse 13, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on this earth. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. And truly, if they had called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is a heavenly country. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. And that's the faith that we have. Yes, we live in this world, but we are not of this world. And we are not to be caught up in the devices of wicked men. We are not to, we are to think on things that are lovely, that are pure, that are true, that are anything that is worthy of praise, right? But like I also said, we're not to be ignorant of them, but we do have this hope, and we do seek a heavenly country, and we know that we are just pilgrims passing through here. And while we are here, as children of the Most High, because we are under his authority, we just are under the authority, and we do what is right, because that's what we are called to do. We're called to be righteous, right? So our hope is in him. Our hope is not in this world. We're all going to put off this tent one day. We're going to be, praise Yah, given new bodies, new heavenly bodies, where they will neither die. There'll be no more crying. There'll be no more sickness. There'll be no more death. So we do have this hope, Mel. So hold on to that. Even though there are wicked people in this world and the powers that be are very wicked, remember always the story of Joseph, where these people or whoever means things for evil, that God can and will and does use it for good. Okay?
Amen, sister. Here again, I don't know. I feel like I got to defend myself. I just, when it comes to edification, it's also, we must open each other's eyes to reality. To know that we live in an evil world and evil things are going on. And, when people think, that, Trump and Musk and these guys are going to solve all of our problems and all that, no, it's not going to happen. Here is the reality of how evil this world is. Everything those guys are doing, I love it. It's fantastic. It's amazing. I look for it and I'm like, wow, Father, please let it get enacted. The problem is every single thing they're doing is being contested in courts of law. And that can tie everything up for years and years and years. Anybody that's been in a courtroom situation knows how slow the wheels of justice are. So even though they're putting all this stuff out there that they're finding is wrong and the things that they want to change, nothing is actually getting done yet because all of it is being contested by the beast system. Now, when you start to see the taxes go down, the food go down, the gas go down, and you actually start to see reality, yes, we can stand up and cheer and say, "Hey, great, it's actually happening," but nothing's happening yet. I'm sorry. Their intentions are good. What they're trying to do is fantastic. I love every bit of it, but nothing has actually been enacted. About the only thing that's really happening is a lot of these bad guys are getting thrown out of the country, which is fantastic. It's great. But even that is being fought in the courts. That's how evil these people are. So here again, I'm not being pessimistic. I'm just stating the reality of the world we live in, which is controlled by the beast.
I want to send some encouragement your way, particularly in the all here. I had a story that I was talking with a coworker of mine. We were talking about the dollar system, and this guy loves Trump, and he's like, I love everything he does. These tariffs are just absolutely crazy and nuts. And the thing about it is, when you know the story behind the story and all the corruption and how it's attached to the dollar needs to be destroyed. Like, it's within that currency that it has to implode upon itself sometime. No president ever has wanted it to happen on his watch. So if he has it happen on his watch, he's not saying giving credit to him or whatever, but it's pretty humble to allow that to actually crash. The dollar needs to crash. So also the systems that are in place where justice goes so slow. Absolutely right. The corruption that's so obvious, that is so out there, has to be taken down in a way that we do not see. Then it becomes revealed. It's just the only logical way for it to be done, because if you're going to attack them where they can see it, they're gonna combat against it. So what you have to do is the way that's orchestrated in, if you want to go the Q route or anything like that. But as far as hope goes and encouragement, I want to encourage you in this, is that we don't know. We really don't know. Yahuwah is good. And I don't know, there's like, I feel a little bit personally attacked. Just one, I just throw it out there, whatever. When it comes across as this is the way that it is. Whatever happened to believing with faith and not by sight? So that's just my encouragement. Nonetheless, I'm not really feeling entirely offended. I'm not trying to attack you. I really do want to encourage you. I do like your viewpoint. I think it's very well expressed in quantity. So I'll let that be said there.
Yeah, and I need to jump in. And brother, I am just, sometimes I get too passionate. I'm not trying to attack you. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. It was not my intention to come across as if I was attacking you. Sometimes we just have weeks where we need to hear edification, and that was what was on my heart. And you and I think we had this kind of conversation, and I heard you say the same things to me last week. And so I was, just trying to pull positivity out. And because I felt like I wasn't getting anything, I get too overly passionate. So please forgive me. I am so sorry.
Now, one of the
problem. No need for forgiveness, sister. You're fine. You're fine. I just wanted to say how it was making me feel. But yeah, there's no need for forgiveness. I hold no ill will. Trust me, to no one. I am one of those crazy people that I am pretty much totally at peace because I know what's coming. I know who wins in the end, and I know what's coming and what happens in between. If it gets good, so be it. But I can't see it. there's nothing that I see in Scripture that says that the world, the world is going to get better. We as a group of people here, yeah, we can get better, we can get stronger, but the world, I'm sorry, I think the world is doomed. I think the only thing we have to live that's actually coming our way is judgment. I think that's the one thing we can look forward to, is that He is going to come back and establish His kingdom, and that we are going to be there. And that's my positive thinking, is that I know what's coming. So no, there's no need for forgiveness. I didn't say that to try to make you feel bad or anything. So don't get me wrong on that. Okay, I love you. I love everybody here. This is my home. I love this group. I've said it so many times. I thank Noel. I think Noel has been blessed to put a group like this together, to where we are able to come out here and we are able to speak our minds, and we are able to share what has been given to us by the Holy Spirit. So it's home. Love you, sister. No problem at all.
I think that to speak really quickly on this group is I know I don't go out there to other groups. I don't really know what they're like. I have been told by like one of my elders and a couple others that they have told me that they go out to all these different groups and they say there's nothing else out there like this, because other groups just have infighting. And now I will tell you guys, the one room I don't go into here is the calendar room, unless if I am specifically instructed to go in to break up a fight or something like that people get heated in the calendar room and people with agendas come. But the testimony of this group is that we have various different individuals in this group with very different views on life, and we get along really well. And for those of you who went to the retreat, I'm going to keep milking the retreat for a little bit longer. 2 or 3 weeks ago, saw that firsthand, that we all got along so great there. Now, because this is an open forum and everybody has, so the way the way I see the Bible is that because I believe that my Messiah is King and King of Lord of Lords, that the idea is King of Kings, right? So he is the authority over every king and every lord on this earth, whether we're talking about China or Russia or America, wherever. And so as far as I'm concerned, everything this is why I call it KINGDOMVERSE, right? Because everything should be able to tie back into the Bible, whether we're talking about religion, politics, anything, conspiracy, history. So when I hear different topics, some of them I'm not as excited about by others. There are some weeks that my wife has come and I probably shouldn't say this, but she's like, man, that was a really boring conversation tonight. She said that a couple times. I say that because I know some of you out there probably feel the same way. Maybe there was a week you're like, yeah, I really didn't connect with anything that was spoken that week. Obviously not all things are going to drive our passions like others. Some people are they're very geared to 2 or 3 topics that they want to talk about all the time. So my suggestion to everyone in the group is to steer the conversation how you would like it to be steered. Ask a question or things like that. I will say one more thing. One of the hard things that I've had with this ministry is recognizing that people do have a very different idea as to how these conversations should come down. I've had people leave this group over the fact that I would read from extra biblical books on a Sabbath. They would say that is a sin, and that the Torah does not define that as a sin, but it is wrong, and that we are not supposed to read from any other biblical books, just the Torah on Sabbath, or maybe the Gospels or whatever. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't see that, right? Things like that, like who put the authority on those books versus some of these extra biblical books, things like that. And not everyone can agree on as to how what things we should or shouldn't talk about. So I do appreciate everybody's just kind of mercy, giving each other mercy on things maybe you don't agree upon or agree on or whatever, different points of views. And yeah, I'll say what I guess Lisa just wrote. Hopefully you guys still hear me. She says, I will add to that to say my mom and stepsister listened to last Friday night conversation a few days ago. My sister Marlee, who I guess was that I guess that's where we were talking about the retreat, right? My sister Marlee, who is not very religious, told me that she really liked the tone of our conversation. She thought this was amazing. She did ask what we called Noel, preacher, teacher, what? To which I replied, cult leader, of course, worst cult ever. I guess that's a nice title to have as cult leader. I think that's going to stick with me. I'll put that on my resume someday.
Well, any religion that steps outside of the standard boundaries is always called a cult. Seventh-day Adventist, Jehovah Witness, and of course us. Unexpected cosmology. You're a cult leader. You're one of them guys that Christianity has to watch out for because they just may be led to the truth by our cult leader, Noel.
I'll say that, it's difficult for me sometimes. I look around at, so the masses, the YouTube consumers out there, they get so mad at what other community like YouTube ministries or, you just name them, advocate, or what they're against, what they don't advocate. And it's, sometimes, I'll watch ministries like do hit pieces on something, like they'll like do a hit piece on the Millennial Kingdom or a hit piece on, you just name it, right? It's just that they go down the list. We just dealt with that with 119 doing the hit piece on Andy Hoy because they didn't like the circular, roundish, dome shaped yurt, tabernacle in the wilderness. They wanted the classic rectangle. And I'm completely fine if they want to advocate a rectangle, but I also see the usually these things are fear-based. I'll give you another example. I'm not attacking the guy, just state a fact. Steve Mutria. Now, he used to be 119 and he has his own mission now. He just did a hit piece on the Millennial Kingdom. He heard someone came over to his house and talked to him about it, and he was like, what? And he went up right out there and he made a video like, I gotta keep the flock from going down this path. I gotta steer them away from this, right? And I say this because I understand why they do it. And it as a ministry leader, it is difficult for me sometimes to hear things stated in this community that I completely am against, like on many, many levels. And I have to let the conversation go. And like the fear in me, because there's only two prime emotions, love or fear, right? I want to respond out of fear and go, oh no, I'm going to lose control of this ministry. People won't believe in the things I believe in. I need to go out there and, attack these positions and stuff like that. And I have to let them go. And I just have to be content knowing, what? The truth is the truth. And the truth will never change despite what I believe or the other person believes. So, and that it's tough. It's tough for ministry leaders to fight against that urgency, that sense of having to go out there and, and try to, attack the people who think differently than you. So we're all that to say is, I know like all of us have different views in here, and I appreciate you guys. I want to, I state my opinion because every man needs to have an opinion at the end of the day, right? Hopefully we're not just going with the breeze and just going with, week by week with different videos come out and advocate, and we're just going with that. Every one of us has our opinions and our views, and I hope you guys feel respected in those. I hope you guys come here and are in an environment where you can express what you believe. And I appreciate the sheer amount of people who have been here respectful for me too when I state things that you guys disagree with. Great example is who is the Father and the Son. I mean, that is like serious, like put on your boxing gloves moment. If some of us here are like, no, Yahweh is the Father, and then some of us are saying, no, Yahuwah or Yahweh is the Son, right? And that breaks up communities. And probably some people have left over that. I know some people have left this community probably over politics, over those kind of things. But I appreciate the maturity in this group that, you know, you guys can all come together and bond in our different ideas. That's all I have to say about that. I got a couple more minutes before I'm going on YouTube. Does anyone have any question, any thoughts?
I just want to piggyback what you said. This is the first place and community where I don't feel stupid asking questions or stupid saying something and then have to worry about, you know, being corrected in a manner where someone is correcting me with their finger pointed at me, but I'm being corrected out of love and concern because, you know, we're trying to, iron sharpens iron, right? And we are to edify one another. And so it's really a blessing that I could come and not have any fear of judgment of something that I'm saying, and that if I'm right, great, and if I'm wrong, lovingly I'm corrected. And like that's the best way that somebody wants correction. You know, when you point your finger in someone's face, that's not the way it's really received very well. So just all the love and the grace that everyone has received from the Lord is being exuded and displayed towards one another. And so that's really just a blessing too, because, you know, after you've been called a heretic by a pastor's wife of the church that you're attending, you kind of feel like you don't want to maybe say something anymore. But I really don't feel that way here. And obviously it's true because I have no problem asking questions. And you guys have no problem answering. And I love that when you don't have an answer, you simply say, I don't know. And that's really refreshing.
Oh,
So
man.
thanks.
Oh, man, Jenna, how could anybody call you a heretic? Tell me, like,
I mean,
tell us who that person is. Give us his address. Well, I'll get a posse together. We'll go down there and.
I'll fight them, Jenna. You just tell me where to go and I'll fight them.
Kristen's been itching to throw down. Itching.
I know I've heard Chris.
All of our rubber and go to war.
I've heard Kristen make that claim a few times. She's like, she has this urge to just go fight people in their house.
I wake up daily and I choose violence, and then I end my day and I'm a little disappointed that nobody chose violence with me. And, you know, I get kind of disappointed day by day. I'm like, all right, you know, who's going to meet me halfway here? And alas, here we are. So tomorrow's another day, but I can't fight on Sabbath. So maybe Sunday. Anybody? Any takers?
Oh, that was funny. The other day I told Hank that if he didn't friend request me on Instagram, that I would have you go after him, Kristen.
Wait a minute. I saw how you just threw me out there like that, and then I had to go. I had to make myself known, and that's when I put that meme. I was like, I stay ready, so I don't have to get ready. So,
Like, did you tell me?
no, I'm not your back. I'm not your back. Do what, honey?
Rebecca? I said, I don't know what Chris is talking about. Nobody's willing to throw down with her.
Oh, God, Rebecca. Rebecca tried to take me out behind the like the buffet, where the buffet line was when we would all eat at the retreat. She really tried to take me down, and I'm pretty sure there's at least a few witnesses, and I would like someone to attest that they saw her very violent abuse of me.
I'm pretty sure you started it and enjoyed it, and I was so gentle with you.
Rebecca, I guess my definition of gentle and yours are two very different things. I want to tell you guys something. She really is, like, I call her our little grumpy bear, but I'm telling you, she's tiny, but she's mighty, and I felt her strength firsthand.
If you had the power to go back in time and choose to give into a ministry that would effectively change the way the world sees an idea, would you do it? I think the answer is yes. Well, you don't have to go back in time. What you can do is right now, you can click the link below and give to the Paleo-Hebrew translation effort. What is this? Well, Paleo-Hebrew is the ancient form of Hebrew. When you write Hebrew out, you build it. If I said H2O, you know that I mean water. That's what building a language is. Japanese, Chinese, Korean, they all have this idea, even Paleo Babylonian, the Paleo Egyptian, the hieroglyphics, petroglyphs. They have this idea that when you put a certain group of pictures together, it means a word. That's what Paleo Hebrew was. That's what Paleo Hebrew is. Pamela Glasgow is changing the way that we view the scriptures. You can help. You can go ahead and click the link below and find out how you can change your life, your study of the Bible, your children's life, your children's children, and everybody who, the whole world, man, the whole world can benefit greatly from this. And you can have the power to help right now. All you got to do is click it and give. And it's good to give. What does the Bible say? James says, what is good religion? That I defile not myself with the world, then I give to the widows and the orphans. Well, we're working on number one. Sorry, number two. Well, both, actually. We're working on not defiling ourselves, so hopefully you're working on that too. I'm working on that. But we can give to the widows. And the widows, she's right there. And she's doing a work for you, for us, for the whole world. And we have the power to effectively change the paradigm of how we've seen the scriptures from time immemorial to tomorrow. So do that. All right, be blessed and not stressed.